If you are hearing my voice in this very moment, you have not stumbled upon these words by accident. You have not clicked upon this message because of whim or wandering curiosity. You have been divinely appointed to hear this truth. You have been marked from the foundation of the world to awaken to your millionaire destiny. There are no accidents in the realm of spirit. Everything that happens in your life is the outworking of divine law. Even the detours, even the delays, even the disappointments you have known have been carefully woven to lead you to this hour, to this voice, to this divine decree. I speak not to the doubter, not to the scoffer, not to the casual hearer who glances at truth and walks away unchanged. No, this message carries the vibration of destiny, and only those whom heaven has chosen to rise into wealth, to step into abundance, to inherit the kingdom already prepared for them, will feel its pull. It is as though a lighthouse has shone through the darkness, and only your ship was positioned to see its beam. Others may pass by unaware, but your spirit recognizes it, your soul knows it, and you cannot turn away, for the call of divine wealth has reached you and will not be silenced. The world has long told you a lie, a bitter lie wrapped in appearances and fear, a lie that says wealth is earned by endless toil, by ruthless competition, by scrambling up some fragile ladder built by men who fear lack as much as they chase riches. They told you that abundance belongs to others, that fortune favors a chosen few while you must settle for scraps, while you must labor, strive, hope, and perhaps never taste true freedom. But I tell you, by the authority of divine law, heaven does not forget its own. There is no wealth in the visible world that does not first exist in the unseen. There is no millionaire fortune that was not first spoken into substance by the word, no palace that was not first constructed in consciousness, no treasure that was not first claimed in spirit. What is yours cannot be stolen, what belongs to you by divine right cannot be lost, and the riches marked with your name cannot be given to another. Though appearances may have told you otherwise, though years may have passed without proof, though you may have felt hidden, overlooked, rejected, or denied, none of it has moved the eternal truth of your destiny. The scroll of heaven still holds your fortune complete, and no hand on earth can tear it away. Listen closely, for this is the law of life. You are already wealthy in divine mind. You already possess the fortune you seek. You already walk the halls of abundance in the unseen. Your task is not to become worthy. Your task is not to claw your way upward through fear and striving. Your task is to awaken, to recognize, to decree, and to allow heaven's perfect supply to manifest for you under grace in perfect ways. The beggar prays and waits and wonders why the answer does not come, but the awakened soul speaks with authority, decrees the thing, and it is established unto them. The subconscious mind, that faithful servant, takes every word you speak, every image you hold, and it builds your outer world according to your inner decree. If you have spoken lack, you have built walls of lack. If you have imagined delay, you have tied your own blessings in knots. But if you will speak wealth, if you will imagine fortune, if you will decree abundance as your present reality, nothing on earth or in heaven can withhold it from you. This is not wishful thinking. This is the spiritual science that governs all creation. Thou shalt also decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee. So I speak now to the chosen ones, to the destined millionaires whom heaven has summoned to hear this voice. I tell you, your waiting is over, your wandering is ended. The walls of lack and limitation crumble even now, and the gates of your promised land swing wide. Your fortune is not ahead of you in some far-off day of striving. It is here, it is now, it is already complete in the realm of spirit. Say this with me as a decree, not as a plea. I am marked for wealth. My supply is unlimited. My fortune is established now. Divine riches rush to me in perfect ways, by perfect channels, through divine right action that no man can block. Say it and know it, for heaven moves on the word of faith, and your millionaire destiny begins the moment you dare to speak it as already yours. Divine timing is never late and never hurried. It is the unfolding of heaven's perfect pattern in your life, and because of that, You could not have found this message a moment too soon or a moment too late. Your human mind may have thought you have been delayed, that life has passed you by, that opportunities have closed their doors, but spiritual law declares that nothing has been lost, nothing has been stolen, and everything that belongs to you by divine right has been carefully preserved, waiting for the hour when you would awaken and receive it. In my years of teaching these truths, I have seen countless souls who thought they were finished, thought their window of blessing had closed, thought they had missed their chance for abundance, only to watch heaven sweep away the dust of defeat and bring forth rivers in the desert, miracles of provision that astonished every reasoning mind. I recall a woman who wandered into my studio weary and burdened with debt, convinced she had no hope. She told me she had tried every method, labored for years, yet life rewarded her only with lack. I said to her, "Your struggle has been but the shadow dance of fear. Divine supply needs no struggle. Heaven has not forgotten you, and heaven is never late." I spoke the word for her that day, and within weeks, money that had been locked away for years was released. Channels she had never imagined opened to her, and she found herself walking through doors of provision that had always been hers but had been hidden until the appointed hour. This is how divine guidance works. It leads you without maps, without signs, without fanfare, yet perfectly, surely, inevitably to your good. Many of you have wondered why your path has wound through deserts and storms, why people have walked away, why ventures have failed, why your efforts seemed fruitless. But spiritual law shows us that every detour, every loss, every shut door was heaven's invisible hand steering you away from the counterfeit toward the true. We do not see the full design while we walk through its threads. We only see fragments that appear tangled, unjust, or cruel. But in the higher vision, every step has been a necessary chord in the symphony of your millionaire destiny. Nothing has been wasted. The rejection that wounded you drove you closer to your true fortune. The failures that shamed you broke the hold of false dependence and opened the space for divine supply to flow. Even your deepest valleys have been preparations for mountaintop abundance. All things work together for good to them that love God, and you, chosen one, have been carried along that current, even when you thought yourself lost. From this moment forward, you must abandon the belief that you are delayed, that you are behind, that wealth belongs to others while you are left out. Divine timing is precise, and divine guidance is unfailing. Begin to declare it. I am always in the right place at the right time. Nothing is withheld from me. My channels of supply are divinely selected and divinely timed. Riches flow to me without obstruction. Say it until your heart believes it. For as you decree it, the subconscious aligns with it, and the invisible guides move you effortlessly into visible abundance. Opportunities long hidden will surface, doors you never knocked upon will swing open, and what once seemed impossible will arrive as naturally as dawn follows night. This is the law of divine order. Nothing is random, and nothing is lost. When you recognize this law and trust it fully, fear loses its power to rule you. Anxiety about missing your chance dissolves, and in its place rises a calm authority that draws fortune like a magnet. You begin to see that every so-called coincidence is heaven's arrangement, every meeting divinely appointed, every step ordered by unseen wisdom that knows the exact path to your wealth. You awaken to a new truth. My fortune is inevitable. My millionaire destiny certain, my supply already complete. No man, no system, no circumstance can rob me of it, for heaven is my source and divine timing delivers it perfectly. Speak it boldly now. I am led by spirit. I cannot miss my good. My wealth is divinely timed, divinely guided, divinely guaranteed. Hidden within you, beneath the layers of doubt that years of fear and struggle have draped upon your mind, beneath the stories that others have told you about who you are and what you may have, beneath every false belief that wealth is only for others and never for you, there exists an eternal identity that cannot be erased, an invisible millionaire self already alive in divine mind, waiting for you to awaken to it, waiting for you to recognize what heaven has already declared to be true about you, waiting for you to step into the garments of wealth, consciousness that were tailored for you before you ever drew breath upon this earth. This identity is not something you earn. It is not a rank you achieve through human labor. It is not granted by men who measure worth by coins and titles and fleeting applause. No, this identity is sealed by spirit. It is stamped with the authority of divine law. And though you may have walked for years in the rags of limitation, though you may have spoken the words of poverty and seen them reflected in your affairs, though you may have wandered as a stranger in foreign lands of debt and deprivation, you have never ceased to be the heir of riches, the possessor of an invisible fortune that even now surrounds you like an untapped mine of gold and silver waiting to be claimed. Understand this: the world hides your true inheritance not because heaven is cruel or withholding, but because spiritual law requires recognition before manifestation. It demands acknowledgement before release. It awaits your spoken decree to open the vaults of divine supply. Just as a king's son may be carried off as a child and raised in obscurity, never knowing his royal birthright until the appointed moment when the crown is revealed and the throne restored, so have you lived beneath your station, so have you walked as though fortune belonged to others while the kingdom of wealth has always been yours. "It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom," said the Master, "not merely the scraps of survival, not meager rations to keep you crawling through life, but the entire kingdom of abundance, the limitless treasures of divine provision, the boundless riches of heaven's storehouse. These are already yours, unseen perhaps, but not unreal, invisible to the doubting eye, yet fully formed in spirit, awaiting only the moment when you awaken and declare, 'I am wealthy now. My supply is unlimited. I receive the riches prepared for me from the beginning of time.'" But herein lies the great deception that delays wealth for so many. They believe they must first become worthy. They believe they must prove themselves through sweat and striving and suffering. They believe that lack is a sign of unworthiness, and that only when they have repaid some unknown debt to fate will fortune finally smile upon them. This is the lie of poverty consciousness, the counterfeit law of struggle that has kept countless souls enslaved to fear. Divine law does not require toil. It does not require pleading. It does not require long seasons of deprivation to teach you how to receive. It requires only recognition. The seed of wealth is already planted within you, fully formed and perfect in the superconscious mind. And like every seed, it does not grow by force. It does not ripen because you worry over it or whip it into life. It grows because you recognize that it is already alive, already complete, already containing within itself the full harvest. The oak is not added to the acorn by labor. It is revealed as the acorn unfolds in the soil of recognition. So too is your millionaire identity revealed not by endless effort, but by speaking the word of truth, by seeing yourself as heaven sees you, by clothing your consciousness in wealth and refusing to speak lack another day of your life. Therefore, I tell you, stop striving to become a millionaire and begin decreeing that you already are one. Stop imagining yourself as one who must climb and claw toward abundance and begin imagining yourself as one who already possesses it. Stop allowing the world to name you poor, limited, overlooked, and begin naming yourself rich, abundant, irresistible to divine supply. Say it now with all authority. I am already wealthy in divine mind. I walk in the riches of heaven. My fortune is established and now manifests under grace in perfect ways. Speak it as a decree, for life and death are in the power of the tongue, and as you speak, so shall it be established unto you. The unseen forces of wealth respond not to longing or desperation, but to recognition and command. When you speak wealth as present reality, heaven hears its own voice echoed back and rushes to fulfill its word. Channels of provision open that no human effort could have forced. Opportunities appear that seemed impossible, and riches long prepared for you flow in avalanches of abundance. You do not become wealthy. You awaken to the wealth that has always been yours. And when you do, the world must bow to that unseen authority. People who once overlooked you will now be drawn to you. Doors that stood closed will open as though invisible hands turned the keys. Circumstances that resisted you will now obey you, for your outer world cannot defy the inner decree. You are the hidden millionaire unveiled, the royal heir restored to the throne, the child of divine riches stepping into the estate that no thief could steal, no judge could deny, no circumstance could revoke. This is your true self, and this is the hour to claim it. Stand tall in spirit and declare, I am wealthy now. I walk in unseen riches. My supply is limitless and visible to me now. The law of divine abundance clothes me in fortune, crowns me with prosperity, and establishes me in unshakable wealth. Heaven rejoices in my fortune, and the earth yields to my decree. The greatest lie that has ever wrapped itself around the human mind and strangled the flow of divine riches is this poisonous whisper that says you must first become worthy before heaven will trust you with abundance, that you must earn, sweat, sacrifice, and perhaps even suffer long before you can be entrusted with wealth, that you must somehow qualify for what has already been written in your name from eternity. And because this lie has been repeated by families and churches and schools, and echoed by the collective thought of the fearful world, generations of souls have lived and died believing they were unfit for divine inheritance, believing that wealth was reserved for others, for the chosen few, for those born under a certain star or with a certain privilege, never realizing that their own words and beliefs were chaining them to lack. Never realizing that heaven was waiting all along to pour out riches that required no proving, no struggle, no grinding toil, only the recognition of divine sonship, only the fearless decree that says, I am already supplied, my fortune is secure, and by spiritual law nothing can withhold it from me. Poverty consciousness has been taught as a virtue in many places, as though there is some honor in shrinking from abundance, as though humility requires walking in lack, as though divine love would ever will deprivation for its own children. But I tell you, heaven knows no poverty, the kingdom contains no lack, and the infinite storehouse of divine supply has no gates marked restricted for certain souls. Every belief that says wealth corrupts, every saying that money is evil, every thought that riches must be wrestled from the clenched fist of fate is a false law, a counterfeit decree that has been allowed to run rampant in human consciousness, shaping lives of limitation, because men have not known the power of their own words. Your spoken word is law. It is the scepter by which you rule your world, and when you speak lack, when you confess unworthiness, when you agree with fear, you create conditions that match those declarations. You build invisible walls that block fortune. You bind yourself to the chains of scarcity and call it reality. Yet it is only the shadow of a false decree. The truth, the eternal, unchanging truth, is that you are permanently funded by divine law, eternally backed by invisible riches, and sustained by a supply that cannot fail. You were born fully financed by heaven, and nothing in time or space can cancel that cosmic endowment. The richest man on earth is but a poor imitator of the wealth that is already yours in spirit. The diamonds and gold of the world are mere dust compared to the infinite river of provision that flows unseen but ever present for you. It is not your labor that creates wealth. It is not your cleverness, your education, your human connections. Wealth is spiritual substance, and it is released into your life by decree, by recognition, by the fearless word of faith that declares your millionaire destiny as a present and unshakable fact. All that the Father hath is mine, said the Master, and that same truth is spoken to you now. All of heaven's fortune is yours. It is your Father's good pleasure to give it to you, and you dishonor divine law when you believe that you must crawl for what was given freely, when you believe you must bargain and beg for what was yours before you asked. So let this false belief be shattered now. Stand up in spirit and renounce every word you have ever spoken that agreed with lack, every thought that said, I cannot afford it, every fear that whispered, "I am unworthy of wealth," every sigh of defeat that said, "Perhaps one day, but not for me, not now." Smash these lies with the hammer of divine truth and say boldly, "I am permanently funded by divine law. My supply is limitless, immediate, and perfect. I am supported by the infinite riches of spirit. I am wealthy now, under grace, in perfect ways." Speak it until your very bones vibrate with the rhythm of abundance. Speak it until your subconscious throws off every chain of poverty and opens wide the gates of fortune. Speak it until invisible channels of supply spring open like fountains bursting through stone and pour into your life treasures that no human effort could have secured. Do not merely hope for it. Do not merely dream of it. Do not merely wish for wealth someday. Decree it now as the spiritual fact that it is. Your wealth is not delayed. It is only unseen because you have not recognized it. Like an unopened letter containing a fortune, your supply has waited patiently for you to break the seal with your word of faith. When you declare your permanent funding by divine law, when you stand in the authority of spiritual sonship and speak as one who has already received, the letter is opened, the unseen riches become visible, opportunities arrive without strain, money flows without toil, and every appearance of lack evaporates like morning mist before the sun. This is the law of wealth. You do not chase it, you command it. You do not labor endlessly for it, you align with it. You do not beg for it, you speak it into visibility. For your fortune is already complete, already yours, already guaranteed by heaven itself. Would you like me to continue directly into the next long chapter on how millionaires use spiritual law unknowingly, carrying this same deep and flowing tone? Millionaires who stride through the avenues of the world with apparent ease, who sign papers and close deals and build empires that others marvel at and envy, are not often aware that they are practicing spiritual law. They do not sit in quiet meditation, reading metaphysical texts. They do not always kneel in prayer asking heaven to guide their every step. Yet unknowingly they align with principles that heaven cannot deny. Unknowingly, they walk in assumptions and declarations that compel fortune to flow toward them like iron filings to a magnet. Unknowingly, they speak words of certainty that strike the subconscious like bolts of lightning, carving channels through which wealth rushes to meet them. They may tell you it is hard work, or clever strategy, or simply luck, yet beneath every outward explanation is an inner cause they do not see, a spiritual posture they have assumed without conscious thought. And it is that posture, not the labor of their hands, that has drawn riches to them. Watch closely the man who becomes wealthy seemingly without effort. He speaks with authority. His words carry the ring of inevitability. He declares success long before evidence appears. He walks as though doors must open for him. He expects provision before it is visible, and by these unknowing decrees, he bends the unseen to his will. The law of assumption is at work within him. What he assumes as true becomes true, not because of privilege or favoritism, but because spiritual law responds only to belief, only to the images impressed upon the subconscious by spoken word and unwavering thought. He may not know that every word is a wand, and every belief a seed that must bear fruit. He may not know that the invisible world rearranges itself to match the inner decree, yet he benefits all the same, for divine law operates whether we understand it or not. It is impartial. It is unchanging. It is as exact as mathematics, and it delivers abundance to the one who assumes abundance and decrees it as his rightful state. I recall a businessman who came to me, not as a student of truth, but seeking counsel for what he called uncanny good fortune. He told me that every venture he touched seemed to prosper. Every idea he launched brought returns beyond expectation, while others around him failed despite equal or greater effort. He asked me why he was so lucky, why fortune seemed to favor him. I asked him how he approached his work, and without hesitation, he said, "I always expect it to succeed. I never think about failure. When others hesitate, I move forward already counting the profit as mine." There it was. His fortune did not spring from markets or timing or labor. It sprang from the law of consciousness, from the inner decree of success that he spoke and believed without resistance. The wealth he carried in mind was simply mirrored by his affairs. He was, without knowing it, practicing the law that many strive for years to learn. Life becomes what you believe it to be, and fortune is drawn to the mind that assumes it has already received. This is why I say to you, chosen one, you must awaken and do deliberately what others do unconsciously. You must speak with greater authority than the unknowing millionaire. You must decree wealth with conscious faith rather than blind assumption. You must see yourself not merely as one hoping to join the ranks of abundance, but as one who already stands among the spiritually rich, whose fortune is not fragile or fleeting, but established on divine law that no market crash, no human opinion, no turn of fate can ever dismantle. When you do this, you surpass the worldly millionaire, for you do not build your house upon sand, trusting in chance and circumstance. You build upon the eternal rock of spiritual law, and the wealth that comes to you cannot be shaken, cannot be stolen, cannot be lost, for it is anchored in the invisible, sustained by heaven, and flows to you through channels no earthly force can close. And let this truth settle deep within you. Moral worthiness, as the world defines it, does not dictate the flow of wealth. The law does not ask if you are saint or sinner, deserving or undeserving, before it responds to your belief. It responds only to the decree, only to the spoken word backed by faith. This is why you have seen men of questionable character accumulate fortunes, while good, honest souls struggle in lack. They each receive according to consciousness, according to the seeds they sow in word and thought, according to the law that cannot be mocked. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. But you, awakened soul, you who have been chosen to hear this voice, must not be deceived into thinking that you must forsake goodness to gain riches. No, when you align with divine law consciously, when you speak wealth as a decree of heaven's justice, your fortune is not tainted by greed or fear or falsehood. It is clean, it is pure, it is drawn from the infinite storehouse of spirit and arrives clothed in grace, blessing you and all it touches. Therefore, take hold of this unseen scepter of authority now. Speak as the true millionaire you are. Declare boldly, I expect success in everything I do. Large sums of money flow to me freely and endlessly. Divine opportunities appear before me without delay. I walk in wealth that cannot be hindered, cannot be blocked, cannot be lost. My fortune is anchored in divine law and manifests now, under grace, in perfect ways. As you decree this daily, with rhythm and certainty, you activate within you the very posture that unknowing millionaires stumble upon by accident. But unlike them, your wealth is not chance, your abundance is not fragile, your fortune is not temporary. It is deliberate, it is divine, it is eternal, and it grows richer with every word of truth you speak. There comes a moment in the journey of every soul marked for fortune when the veil of limitation begins to tremble, when the unseen hands of heaven reach down and shake the slumbering mind, when life itself seems to turn and whisper in ways you cannot ignore, saying, awake, you sleeping air, arise and take what is yours. And though the world around you may not yet show a single glimmer of gold or the faintest sign of change, something deep within begins to stir like a royal bloodline suddenly remembering its crown, like a lost child suddenly feeling the pull of home. And this stirring is no accident, no fleeting mood, no empty wish. It is the call of spirit summoning you to recognize who you truly are, to remember that you were never meant to grovel in lack, never meant to scramble for crumbs, never meant to live beneath your divine station, but have always been destined to reign in abundance, to walk clothed in the majesty of wealth consciousness, to live as a visible demonstration of heaven's endless provision on earth. I have often said that most men live like heirs of a vast fortune locked away in a vault whose combination they have forgotten, wandering outside in rags, convinced they are paupers while unimaginable riches sit untouched within reach. And because they do not know the law, because they do not remember their divine right, they never even try the door. Yet when the call comes, and if you are hearing my voice, it has surely come, It is as if the lock begins to click of its own accord, as if unseen forces whisper the forgotten numbers to your soul, as if the sealed vault begins to open without effort, revealing treasures that had always been yours. This awakening cannot be forced by human striving. It is not the product of logic or education. It is the movement of spirit itself. For divine timing has deemed the hour ripe for you to know yourself as heaven knows you, for you to recognize your true wealth, for you to stop playing the beggar and step boldly into your millionaire destiny. So many sleep through their inheritance because they believe life is only what they see with their eyes, because they judge their worth by their bank account, their titles, their earthly status, never realizing that what they see is only the echo of what they have decreed, that the visible is only the shadow of the invisible, that their true treasure is hidden within, waiting for their recognition to call it forth. But you, chosen one, cannot sleep any longer. The trumpet has sounded, the walls of illusion begin to fall, and the spirit within cries out to you with words that do not fade. Awake, thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. The Christ consciousness within you, the awareness of divine wealth, the knowing that you are one with infinite supply, the realization that heaven and earth are aligned to prosper you. This is the light that dawns in awakening. This is the torch that reveals the riches long prepared for you. This is the power that shakes the chains of lack and calls you into dominion over your financial world. Many fear this awakening because it demands that they cast aside every excuse for lack, every identity tied to struggle, every habit of speaking words of defeat. It feels safer to remain in familiar poverty than to step into unknown abundance. For wealth, consciousness requires courage, the courage to speak riches when appearances scream lack, the courage to walk as a king while the world still calls you common, the courage to decree prosperity while your hands are yet empty. Yet this is precisely how the sleeping heir rises into dominion. By answering the call, by aligning his word with heaven's word, by refusing to bow to appearances, and instead walking by the unseen law that says, "All that the Father hath is mine now." The moment you answer this call with faith, unseen legions move on your behalf. Channels of provision that lay dormant begin to open. Opportunities long delayed rush forward. Wealth that was hidden beneath layers of fear and false belief bursts forth like a river breaking through a dam, and life itself begins to bow to the authority of your spoken word. So I say to you now, do not silence this call. Do not return to slumber. Do not believe the old lie that says you must wait for some future time to be rich. The awakening is now. The fortune is now. The divine pattern of your millionaire destiny is complete now. Begin to answer the call with your words. I awake to my divine wealth. I see through the illusion of lack. I am the heir of infinite riches. Channels of supply open to me now. My millionaire destiny is sealed and manifests in perfect ways. Speak it morning and night. Speak it when doubts arise. Speak it when the world challenges your faith. For every time you speak it, you sound the trumpet that brings down the walls of limitation. You summon unseen helpers to prepare your path. You align with the eternal truth that heaven has marked you for wealth. And as surely as dawn follows night, as surely as the seed bursts from the soil into blossom, as surely as divine law cannot fail, you will rise from the sleep of poverty into the daylight of your millionaire inheritance, and all the world shall witness what heaven has always known. You were never poor. You were never without supply. You were never forsaken. You were simply asleep to your divine riches, and now you are awake. When the sleeping air finally stirs and the sound of awakening echoes through the chambers of the subconscious mind, when you begin to sense that there is more to you than struggle and scarcity, and you catch even the faintest glimpse of your millionaire destiny waiting just beyond the veil of appearance, you must do more than merely think of wealth or wish for prosperity. You must speak it into being with a voice that carries the authority of heaven itself. For words are the bridges between the invisible and the visible. Words are the chisels that carve divine substance into form. Words are the wands of magic that command riches to take shape in your affairs. And until you take hold of this power and use it deliberately, you remain like a king with a sealed decree in his hand, who never speaks it aloud and thus never sees his realm obey. This is why I tell you now that there is a spoken wealth formula, a spiritual incantation that has brought rivers of gold into the lives of countless souls who dared to declare it with conviction, a decree that strikes the subconscious like thunder and sends ripples through the unseen, rearranging circumstances, drawing opportunities, and compelling supply to flow from directions no reasoning mind could have orchestrated. The formula is simple yet laden with power that cannot be exhausted. Large sums of money come to me now, under grace, in perfect ways. When you first speak these words, your human mind may scoff, your reason may sneer, your outer world may present only debts and delays and deficiencies. But divine law does not heed appearances, it responds only to decree. And when you repeat this formula rhythmically, consistently, with unwavering belief, you set in motion forces that cannot be stopped. The subconscious mind, that faithful but impressionable servant, begins to picture you as wealthy, begins to align with fortune, begins to expect abundance. And because the subconscious is the bridge to the divine mind, what you impress upon it cannot fail to appear in your experience. It may arrive as sudden gifts, as unexpected opportunities, as contracts or inheritances or ideas that burst with golden potential, but arrive it must, for spiritual law is exact, and the spoken word never returns void. I recall the story of a man bound in chains of poverty for years, laboring long hours, yet never seeing more than enough to survive, until he learned this formula and, with desperate faith that burned brighter than his fear, began to declare it daily, not timidly, but as one who knew he was issuing commands to the universe itself. He walked the streets whispering it under his breath. He spoke it upon waking and before sleep. He shouted it silently against the noise of his doubts. Large sums of money come to me now, under grace, in perfect ways. At first, nothing changed, and those around him mocked his declarations, but he persisted, for he understood that spiritual seeds require time to root and blossom. Then, without warning, money began to appear from places unseen. Old debts repaid, forgotten investments maturing, opportunities offered without solicitation, gifts flowing from unexpected quarters, until his life was transformed from hand-to-mouth survival into a steady stream of provision that seemed almost miraculous to those who watched. Yet there was no miracle in the sense of chance. It was divine law obeying a spoken command. It was heaven responding to a decree of faith. It was the invisible treasury of spirit opening its vaults because a rightful heir had finally spoken the key. This formula works not because it is magic words strung together in superstition, but because it aligns perfectly with spiritual principles. It acknowledges abundance as present and available now. It releases the human impulse to force results and instead trusts the grace of divine timing. And it declares that the channels through which wealth arrives shall be perfect, harmonious, and free from harm. Every phrase carries vibration. Large sums of money impresses the mind with magnitude and possibility. Come to me now establishes immediacy and certainty. Under grace ensures that the flow is lawful, safe, and just, and in perfect ways guarantees that what arrives is fitting, beneficial, and aligned with the divine plan of your life. Speak these words as though you were a general commanding an army of unseen forces, as though you were a king issuing an unbreakable edict, as though you were heaven itself declaring truth into manifestation, and watch how swiftly life bends to obey the rhythm of your decree. But do not merely speak it once and return to the language of lack, for that is like planting a seed and then digging it up each day to see if it has sprouted. You must speak it until it saturates your subconscious, until your very cells hum with the vibration of wealth, until your thoughts naturally align with riches, until you can no longer imagine poverty as part of your story. When fear whispers, answer with the formula. When bills arrive, answer with the formula. When others around you speak limitation, silently or aloud, answer with the formula. Let it become the pulse of your inner life. Let it echo like a drumbeat that marches you steadily toward your fortune. Let it resound so strongly within that no outer appearance of lack can shake your confidence. Understand this. When you speak this formula, you are not asking heaven to give you something it has withheld. You are not begging a distant power to take pity on you. You are claiming what is already yours, unlocking the invisible channels of divine supply that have waited patiently for your recognition, shaking the dust off fortunes long prepared with your name engraved upon them. Spiritual wealth is eternal and unmovable, and when you speak with authority, you step into alignment with that eternal truth. Like a radio tuning into a broadcast that has been playing all along, your words tune your consciousness to the frequency of abundance, and suddenly you hear, see, and receive what was always present but unheard, unseen, and unreceived before. So I say to you now, take up this formula and wield it like a sword of light cutting through every shadow of poverty, every wall of lack, every knot of fear. Declare it boldly, declare it rhythmically, declare it with unshakable knowing. Large sums of money come to me now, under grace, in perfect ways. As you do, watch how the invisible begins to move. Watch how divine order arranges circumstances. Watch how channels of wealth you never imagined spring open. Watch how opportunities arrive without struggle. And watch how fortune, already yours in spirit, manifests visibly in ways that leave no doubt that heaven has marked you for riches. This is not fantasy, it is law, and law never fails those who dare to speak it with faith. There was once a soul who lived as though wrapped in a heavy cloak of invisibility, moving through the world unseen, unheard, unnoticed by fortune, ignored by opportunity, shadowed by lack that clung like mist to every corner of life. And for years this soul believed the lie that some are destined for greatness, while others must remain hidden, that wealth flows only to those born under certain stars or blessed with rare advantage. And so each day was lived in quiet resignation, watching others rise while silently wondering why heaven seemed blind to their existence. But heaven is never blind, spirit is never deaf, divine law is never unjust. And though outward appearances spoke only of delay and denial, deep within this soul the seed of millionaire destiny lay dormant but intact, eternal and uncorrupted, waiting for the hour when light would pierce the darkness of self-doubt, and the voice of truth would awaken remembrance of who they truly were. That hour came not with trumpets or fanfare, not with sudden riches or accolades, but with a whisper carried on unseen winds, a whisper of divine order that guided this forgotten heir to hear words much like the ones you hear now, words that shook old beliefs like thunder rolling through mountains, words that declared wealth as divine right and not human privilege, words that revealed poverty as nothing but a shadow cast by false decrees, words that spoke of a law higher than effort, a law surer than chance, a law of spoken authority that commands fortune from the unseen into the seen. And as these words entered the heart of this long invisible soul, something ancient and powerful stirred, a memory, a knowing, a flicker of light in the deepest darkness, and for the first time they dared to believe that perhaps they had been chosen all along, that perhaps their invisibility was but the veil before revelation, that perhaps wealth had not forgotten them but was waiting, patiently, silently, for their recognition. So this soul began to walk a new path, a path not paved with frantic labor or desperate schemes, but with spoken word and inner transformation. A path where each day began, not with fear of lack, but with the bold declaration, "Large sums of money come to me now, under grace, in perfect ways." At first, nothing in the outer world seemed to change. The same debts glared, the same bills arrived, the same silence of opportunity persisted. But within, invisible roots were growing, subconscious chains were loosening, spiritual soil long hardened by despair was breaking open beneath the power of repeated decree. For divine law is exact and cannot fail, and each word spoken with faith was like striking a hammer upon the walls of limitation, weakening them, cracking them until at last they crumbled entirely, and the channels of wealth that had been dammed for years burst forth with unstoppable flow. It began quietly, with forgotten money surfacing from places unlooked for, with strangers offering assistance unasked, with ideas rising from intuition like golden seeds planted by unseen hands, ideas that drew success without struggle, ventures that prospered with ease, connections that formed seemingly by chance, yet clearly guided by invisible intelligence. And as these signs multiplied, as wealth began to manifest in ways undeniable, the soul who had once lived unseen now stood radiant in visibility, chosen, recognized, honored not only by men, but by the movement of heaven itself. No longer hidden, no longer overlooked, they walked in a consciousness so magnetic that opportunities sought them out. Riches pursued them, fortune clung to them as naturally as shadow follows light, for they had shed the cloak of invisibility and clothed themselves instead in the garment of divine wealth consciousness. This transformation was not the product of luck, nor the charity of others, nor the shifting tides of fortune's wheel. It was spiritual law fulfilled, the invisible truth made visible, the divine inheritance claimed at last by one who dared to decree it as present fact. And let it be known that this story is not of a distant stranger. It is the story of every chosen soul who answers the call you hear now. It is your story waiting to be written, your transformation waiting to be lived, your fortune waiting to rush forth as soon as you cast off the old identity of lack and take up the word of power. Speak it as they did, with unwavering conviction. I am the chosen heir of divine riches. Wealth recognizes me now. My supply is immediate, endless, and visible. All channels of abundance open to me under grace, in perfect ways. Declare it until your invisible chains snap. Declare it until unseen doors swing wide. Declare it until you stand as one recognized by heaven and earth alike as a true millionaire, divinely appointed, chosen, and eternally funded by law that cannot be broken. There is a law as ancient as creation itself, a law that moves silently through every unseen realm and governs the flow of wealth with unerring precision. A law that neither slumbers nor forgets. A law as impartial and exact as gravity, and it is this: what you do not recognize cannot stay. What you do not acknowledge cannot manifest. What you do not honor cannot multiply. For recognition is the divine spark that calls invisible substance into visible form. Recognition is the key that unlocks the vaults of abundance. Recognition is the voice that tells heaven you are ready to receive what has always been yours. Many souls wander through life like beggars in a royal court, surrounded by riches they cannot see, brushing past opportunities they do not grasp, crying for supply while divine treasure chests sit unopened at their feet because they have not yet recognized their own wealth consciousness. They have not yet said to themselves with authority, "This fortune is mine now, this kingdom is mine now, this river of gold flows for me now." And until they do, until they awaken to their own possession, the law cannot deliver what they themselves deny. Recognition is not idle wishing, it is not timid hoping, it is not looking to the heavens and pleading for favors. For such postures only affirm distance between you and your good. Recognition is bold and unflinching. It is the spiritual vision that pierces the veil of appearances and sees only truth. It is the unwavering conviction that even when your hands are empty, the treasury of spirit is overflowing. Even when your purse is thin, divine supply is full and inexhaustible. Even when the world tells you there is nothing for you, heaven whispers that all is already yours. To recognize wealth is to meet it with faith before it arrives, to speak to it as present reality before it takes form, to greet it as an old and certain friend rather than chase it as an elusive prize. The law of recognition responds only to such vision, for heaven cannot thrust abundance upon those who call themselves poor. Divine supply cannot pour itself into vessels labeled unworthy. Riches cannot rest in hands that continually wave them away with words of fear and disbelief. I have seen many who sought tirelessly to change their conditions, working without end, striving for promotions, scheming for gain, only to see every opportunity slip away. And when they came to me and I looked beneath the surface of their lives, I saw not lack of ability nor scarcity of opportunity, but simply this: they had not recognized their own wealth. They carried the image of limitation in their hearts. They spoke the language of poverty. They believed fortune belonged elsewhere, and so every channel of supply remained closed, every path to abundance blocked, not by fate, nor by enemies, nor by circumstance, but by their own refusal to see themselves as rich. When I taught them to speak words of recognition, when I taught them to look upon their own lives and say, "I am surrounded by wealth, I am filled with abundance, I am rich in spirit, and my riches are now manifest," when I gave them affirmations like divine keys to fit the locks they themselves had fastened, suddenly channels burst open, opportunities appeared as if summoned from thin air, long-lost fortunes returned as though drawn by magnetic pull, because recognition had at last made them visible to their own wealth. Recognition had aligned their consciousness with what heaven had been holding for them all along. Understand this clearly. Wealth cannot recognize you until you recognize it. Money cannot attach itself to those who continually disown it with words of lack. Divine channels cannot release supply to those who deny being its rightful recipients. Recognition is not arrogance, it is alignment with divine law. When you say, "I am wealthy now," you are not boasting in human pride, you are harmonizing with spiritual truth. When you say, "My supply is unlimited and immediate," you are not imagining fantasy. You are speaking the eternal fact of divine provision. When you declare, "I am rich in every aspect of life," you are not deceiving yourself. You are awakening from deception into reality. For heaven has never known you as poor, divine mind has never seen you as lacking, and the universe has never withdrawn supply from you. Only your recognition has slept, and now it must awaken. This is why I give you now a practice as vital as breath itself, a ritual of recognition that will dissolve the fog of poverty consciousness and reveal the glowing treasures of spirit standing all around you even now. Each morning, before you rise to meet the world, before you touch a coin, or think upon a bill, or step into the labors of the day, speak aloud with unshakable faith. I recognize my wealth. I see divine riches surrounding me now. I honor the fortune prepared for me, and I claim it as mine today. The vaults of heaven are open and pour into my life every perfect form of supply under grace in miraculous ways. Speak it slowly, speak it boldly, speak it until you feel the shift in your spirit, until the image of wealth burns so bright in your mind that lack can no longer find a foothold, until you know with absolute certainty that unseen forces are arranging themselves to deliver everything you have recognized as yours. As you continue this ritual, you will notice that wealth begins to acknowledge you in return. Money that once slipped away begins to linger and multiply. Opportunities that passed you by now stop and bow before you. People who ignored your value now recognize your worth and offer compensation that matches it. Doors that seemed bolted shut swing wide, as though welcoming home a rightful heir. This is not chance nor coincidence. It is the law of recognition made manifest. It is heaven nodding back to you because at last you have lifted your head and nodded first. It is divine supply rushing forward because at last you have raised your voice and claimed what has waited patiently for you to accept it. So take these words and engrave them upon your mind as eternal truth. Until you recognize your fortune cannot appear. Until you honor your wealth cannot stay. Until you speak as a millionaire, you cannot live as one. Therefore, declare now with all the fire of faith within you. I recognize my fortune. I honor my wealth. I speak as the millionaire I am, and divine riches manifest for me this day under grace and in perfect ways. Say it and believe it, for in the unseen, even as you speak, channels are opening, supply is moving, fortune is flowing, and the wealth you have finally recognized as yours cannot help but rush into your visible world. There is a rhythm in heaven that only the awakened soul can hear, a divine cadence that pulses through every unseen corridor of supply, a living current that carries wealth like a mighty river rushing toward its destined banks. And when you learn to speak in harmony with this rhythm, when your words no longer stutter with doubt or tremble with hesitation, but flow with the certainty of divine law itself, you unlock a new dimension of manifestation where riches no longer trickle in fragments, but surge toward you as torrents of provision, unstoppable, unbounded, and complete. This is why I now place in your hands another spoken formula, a second decree of power designed to seal your millionaire consciousness so deeply into your subconscious that nothing can uproot it, designed to transform your voice into a tuning fork vibrating with the frequency of wealth, designed to imprint upon the invisible substance of spirit an image of abundance so vivid, so magnetic, that the outer world must bow to it and conform. The formula is this: I am the voice of wealth. My supply is unlimited and now visible. These are not idle words. These are not poetic sentiments meant to comfort you temporarily. They are spiritual commands forged in the furnace of divine truth. When you speak them with faith, you do not merely describe wealth. You become wealth. You do not simply request provision. You embody provision. You do not plead for fortune to visit. You speak as fortune itself. And because life can only reflect what is spoken into it with authority, the moment these words are truly believed, the moment they roll from your tongue like a decree from the throne room of heaven, the entire field of your affairs begins to reshape itself in obedience to your command. Opportunities that were hidden emerge from shadows. Streams of money that were dammed break forth in abundance. Invisible channels that were long blocked burst open and pour wealth into your life in ways so miraculous that every remnant of doubt is swept away like chaff in a whirlwind. I remember a student who came to me burdened with years of toil, worn by the endless grind of chasing money that always seemed to slip through her fingers like water through a sieve. She spoke of her struggles with tears in her eyes, believing herself cursed with misfortune. But I heard beneath her words the silent cry of divine destiny aching to be spoken, and I gave her this formula. At first, she whispered it timidly, as though afraid of its power, saying, I am the voice of wealth. My supply is unlimited and now visible. Without conviction, without rhythm, without authority, I told her to speak it again and again until her own voice thundered with certainty, until every syllable rang like a bell struck by faith, until her subconscious trembled and yielded to the truth. For days she repeated it, hundreds of times, until something in her shifted, and she spoke it one morning, not as a wish, but as a command. And at that moment, she felt a presence, a force, a knowing that wealth had heard her and answered. Within weeks, business ventures that had long stagnated suddenly flourished. Clients she had never sought appeared with generous offers, and her income multiplied with such ease that she wondered why she had struggled so long. It was not magic, it was law, and the law had waited patiently for her to speak as wealth itself. This is how divine law works. You cannot merely hope for riches, you must become the voice through which they speak. You cannot simply long for fortune, you must decree it as your own. You cannot walk timidly toward abundance, you must stand as one who embodies it now. The spoken word is the bridge, the key, the wand, the invisible hand that draws the unseen into the seen. And when you align your words with the vibration of wealth itself, you become irresistible to fortune. The world cannot deny what heaven has already affirmed. Banks, contracts, investments, gifts, inheritances, ideas, all these channels are mere servants of the decree that issues from your lips. When you say, I am the voice of wealth, my supply is unlimited and now visible, you summon these channels into perfect obedience. You summon money from hidden places. You summon opportunities that have wandered lost in the wilderness of delay. You summon every perfect form of supply into your sphere of visibility, for the law cannot resist its own echo spoken through you. But you must speak it rhythmically. You must let it imprint upon the deep places of your mind like a seal pressed into wax. You must let it reverberate until your very heartbeat seems to drum in time with its cadence. Morning and night, while walking or resting, speak it aloud. I am the voice of wealth. My supply is unlimited and now visible. Speak it until fear has no room to whisper. Speak it until poverty consciousness crumbles to dust. Speak it until your eyes begin to see provision where once they saw only lack. Speak it until every word you utter carries the fragrance of riches, until even your silent thoughts vibrate with prosperity, until you no longer merely believe you will be rich, but know beyond all appearance that you already are. When you reach this point, wealth cannot help but pour into your life, for you and wealth will no longer be separate. You will be one, and oneness with fortune is the final key that transforms unseen riches into overflowing manifestation. Declare it now with the authority of divine law. Speak it as one who knows heaven listens and earth obeys. I am the voice of wealth. My supply is unlimited and now visible. Every channel of abundance is open. Every river of riches flows to me now. Under grace, in perfect ways, I walk as divine wealth made visible. Let these words become the living language of your soul, and watch as they call forth treasures that no human effort could secure, opportunities that no reasoning could predict, fortunes that no circumstance can delay. For when you speak as wealth, you are no longer seeking riches. You are creating them, commanding them, and releasing them into form through the law that never fails. Comparison is a silent curse, a creeping thief of wealth and joy, an invisible chain that binds the soul to a false identity of lack and insufficiency. And it operates so subtly, so quietly, that many do not even realize how deeply it has entwined itself around their consciousness, strangling their faith, dimming their vision, and delaying the manifestation of their divine fortune. From the earliest moments of life, the world trains the mind to look sideways instead of upward, to measure one's worth by the shadows of others rather than the light of divine purpose, to seek validation in rankings and opinions and fleeting signs of success rather than in the eternal truth of spiritual identity. You have been told to watch what others have achieved, to feel smaller if they rise higher, to feel behind if they seem ahead, to doubt your own destiny because another appears to flourish more quickly. This is a lie so poisonous that it has crippled the manifestation of countless souls, and until it is broken, until this curse is cast out by divine decree, the full measure of your wealth cannot flow unimpeded into your life, for comparison is a denial of divine individuality, and divine law cannot pour abundance into a vessel that denies its own unique design. Every soul is crafted with a perfect spiritual blueprint, an unrepeatable expression of divine supply, a pattern of wealth and success unlike any other in heaven or earth, and when you compare yourself to another, you abandon your own blueprint and attempt to live by theirs. You silence your own divine song and echo another's melody. You walk paths that are not yours to walk, and in doing so, you block the channels of abundance that were designed solely for you. No two souls are given the same channels of supply. No two destinies are meant to unfold in identical ways. No two fortunes are woven from the same threads. For spirit delights in infinite variety, in endless diversity of expression, and to compare is to resist this divine variety, to reject the wealth that only you can manifest. This is why so many strive to replicate the success of others, mimicking their steps, copying their methods, chasing their opportunities, only to find disappointment and frustration, because spiritual law does not bless imitation. It blesses authenticity. It prospers individuality. It enriches the one who walks boldly in their own divine pattern without glancing sideways to measure their steps against another's. Scripture declares, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." This is not mere poetry. It is spiritual law in its purest form. To have the Lord as your shepherd is to be guided individually, to be led to pastures prepared specifically for you, to drink from streams chosen for your soul alone. A shepherd does not lead every sheep to the same blade of grass at the same moment. Each is guided along its own perfect route, receiving supply in its own perfect timing. When you compare your journey to another's, you abandon the shepherd's guidance, you wander into pastures not meant for you, and you cry out in want because you have left the path of your own provision. Divine law has already set aside treasures for you that no other soul can touch, channels of wealth that only you can open, opportunities that bear your name written in the unseen. And yet comparison blinds you to these treasures. It deafens you to the call of your own path. It shuts the gates of your own channels because you are busy looking at someone else's garden instead of tending to the seeds heaven placed in your hands. To break this curse, you must cast out every spirit of comparison with a spoken word of authority. You must declare boldly, I release every need to compare. I renounce the lie of insufficiency. I walk in my own divine path of wealth. My fortune is unique and perfect. My channels of supply open now under grace in perfect ways. Speak these words not timidly, but as one delivering a verdict that heaven itself enforces. For comparison is not broken by wishful thinking, it is broken by decree. When you speak this law aloud, you sever the invisible cords that have bound you to others' fortunes. You release the psychic weight of competition. You free your consciousness to expand into the fullness of your own wealth without obstruction. And as you do, something miraculous begins to unfold. You find joy in the success of others without diminishing your own. You celebrate abundance wherever you see it without feeling threatened. You witness the riches of others as confirmation, not condemnation, knowing that divine supply is infinite and inexhaustible. The more you bless the wealth you see around you, the more heaven rushes to deliver your own, for blessing aligns you with abundance while comparison aligns you with lack. When you see another prosper, declare aloud, what God has done for them, He now does for me and more. I rejoice in their success, and I call forth my own. By these words, you transform envy into empowerment, competition into confirmation, limitation into limitless possibility, and you open channels of wealth that were long blocked by the shadows of comparison. Understand deeply that your millionaire destiny cannot be delayed by another's success. It cannot be stolen by another's actions. It cannot be diminished by another's rise, for what is yours by divine right is yours eternally. The scroll of heaven cannot be rewritten by human hands. The fortune prepared for you cannot be transferred to another. The channels of your supply cannot be redirected by competition or envy. The only force that can obscure your wealth is your own refusal to see it, your own belief that you are less because another appears more, your own abandonment of the divine blueprint that marks you as unique. Cast off this curse now. Stand tall in your individuality and decree with finality. I walk free from all comparison. I am rich in my own perfect way. My millionaire destiny is secure. I shall not want, for heaven's fortune is mine now, visible, tangible, and overflowing under grace in perfect ways. Speak it until your soul knows it. Speak it until comparison dies root and branch. Speak it until every channel of abundance unique to you bursts wide open, and wealth flows into your life like rivers freed from ancient dams, unstoppable and undeniable, bearing witness to the truth that there is no competition in divine supply, for every child of spirit holds an infinite inheritance that none can take away. Faith is not a fragile wish whispered into silence and hope to be heard. It is not a trembling hope that maybe someday something good might come to pass if fortune is kind and others permit it. Faith is a living magnetic force, a power unseen yet undeniable, an invisible law of attraction that draws to you every good, every opportunity, every sum of money, every channel of provision that belongs to you by divine right. And until this faith is awakened, until it is stirred from dormancy into blazing certainty, you may speak words and utter affirmations and attempt to decree wealth, but they will float like hollow sounds through empty air, lacking the fire that compels the universe to obey. Magnetic faith does not ask, it commands. Magnetic faith does not hope, it knows. Magnetic faith does not strain, it attracts. And once this force is activated in you, Wealth cannot remain distant, abundance cannot be withheld, fortune cannot be delayed, because the unseen currents of spirit are drawn to it with irresistible pull, just as surely as iron filings rush to a magnet's touch. Imagine the air around you filled with golden dust, particles of wealth swirling invisibly in every direction. Fortunes already prepared, hovering like luminous treasures awaiting release. Opportunities circling like radiant birds seeking a resting place. But they cannot land, they cannot attach, they cannot flow into visibility until the magnetic field of your faith is switched on, until you become the living center of attraction that draws these blessings from the unseen into your hands, your accounts, your ventures, your very experience. This field is not built by willpower, nor by frantic striving, nor by desperate pleas to heaven. It is awakened by absolute trust in divine law, by the unshakable conviction that supply is yours now, by the inner knowing that you are backed by infinite riches and supported by unseen hosts of provision. When this knowing fills you completely, when it saturates your subconscious and radiates from your spoken words, you no longer chase money. You no longer beg opportunities to find you. Money begins to seek you out. Opportunities begin to pursue you. Fortune begins to surround you, drawn by the magnetic current of your faith like rivers converging into a mighty ocean. I recall a man who had struggled for years, chasing every new idea, every promise of quick wealth, every method the world offered, yet each one dissolved into disappointment until he arrived at my teaching broken and exhausted. I told him, "You are not attracting because you are not believing. You are moving outward in desperation instead of inward in faith. You are pushing away wealth because you do not trust divine law to deliver it without struggle." I gave him an affirmation to speak with rhythm and conviction. I am magnetized by divine faith. Infinite riches are drawn to me now. Wealth clings to me like light to the sun. My fortune manifests by spiritual law under grace in perfect ways. At first, he recited it mechanically, but day by day, as he persisted, something within him shifted. His voice grew stronger, his posture straightened, his mind stopped racing with fear. One morning he woke with an unexplainable certainty that he was permanently funded by heaven, that wealth was his by divine inheritance, that nothing could prevent it. From that day forward, without chasing or pleading, opportunities flowed to him with astonishing ease. Investors sought him out. Ventures that had lain dormant blossomed overnight, and he himself said, "It feels as though the world has been magnetized to bring me wealth." But the world had not changed. His faith had, and faith drew everything into alignment. To activate this magnetic faith in your own life, you must first strip away every word of doubt, every thought of fear, every vibration of lack that has clung to your subconscious like chains of lead. You must wash your mind in declarations of divine certainty until your entire being hums with the energy of absolute trust. Morning and night, speak these words: "My faith is a living magnet. I am aligned with infinite riches. Every channel of abundance is drawn to me now. Wealth cannot resist my faith. Fortune is attached to me permanently, under grace and in perfect ways. Do not speak them weakly as though you hope they might be true. Speak them as law. Speak them as a verdict. Heaven has already issued. Speak them as the undeniable reality of your millionaire identity. With every repetition, the field of your faith grows stronger. Unseen particles of provision begin to swirl closer. Channels of money begin to shift and flow toward you until the magnetic force is so potent that nothing can stand in its way. And once this faith is fully alive, you will no longer look outward for signs to believe, for you will know within that wealth is already yours, that it cannot be lost, that it cannot pass you by. You will walk into every room as a magnet of abundance, attracting favor, drawing opportunities, pulling forth riches without effort. People will feel it and not know why they are compelled to offer you business, gifts, support. Circumstances will align as though invisible hands have moved them into place. Money will stream to you in ways that defy logic but obey spiritual law perfectly. and you will stand as a living testament to divine provision, not by grasping, not by chasing, but by the power of magnetic faith that has made you irresistible to wealth itself. Declare now with full authority, "My faith is magnetic. Wealth clings to me now. I attract abundance without effort. My millionaire destiny is secured by spiritual law, and fortune is permanently drawn to me under grace and in perfect ways." Speak it, believe it, feel it, until the very air around you vibrates with attraction. And watch how heaven and earth conspire to deliver riches that cannot be delayed, cannot be denied, cannot be measured. For when faith becomes magnetic, abundance has no choice but to obey. Would you like me to continue directly into the case study? Instant channel opening chapter with this same long, uninterrupted Villelon rhythm? There was a man who came to me with desperation etched into every line of his face, a man who had tried for years to force open the channels of his prosperity through human will, through endless striving, through sleepless nights of planning and worrying and straining. Yet every attempt left him weaker, poorer, and more defeated than before, and he arrived before me with a trembling voice, asking why heaven seemed silent while his cries for provision went unanswered. I looked at him not with pity, but with spiritual certainty, for I could see beneath the rags of his appearance the glowing signature of divine inheritance. I could see that he was not forsaken, but only tangled in the nets of fear and disbelief. And I told him plainly that the channels of his wealth were not closed by circumstance, nor by fate, nor by the hands of others. They were bound only by his own words of doubt, sealed only by his own belief that he must fight and bleed for every morsel of supply, chained only by his refusal to let spiritual law deliver his good without resistance. I instructed him to lay down every thought of struggle, to release every image of blocked pathways and vanished opportunities, to stop speaking words that painted his fortune as distant and elusive, and instead to affirm with unwavering rhythm that every channel of his supply was now wide open, that nothing could obstruct the flow of divine riches prepared for him from the beginning of time. I gave him a decree to speak until it pierced through the walls of limitation he had built around himself. Divine channels of wealth are now open. I give thanks that my fortune rushes to me now, under grace and in perfect ways. Nothing can close the paths heaven has prepared. My supply is instant, my riches are visible, and my millionaire destiny is fully manifest. At first, his voice shook with unbelief, for the outer world seemed to mock these words, showing him only locked doors and unpaid debts. But I urged him to continue, to let faith carve its imprint upon the deep places of his subconscious, until the truth within him thundered louder than the lies of appearance. For several days, he repeated the decree, morning and night, while walking, while eating, even in moments of despair when all seemed hopeless. Slowly, the chains of fear began to loosen. He felt an unseen weight lifting from his chest. He sensed currents moving through nothing visible had yet changed, and he said it felt as though an invisible river of gold was pressing against a dam inside his mind. Then, without warning and without effort on his part, the first channel broke open. A forgotten investment matured far beyond expectation, delivering a sum of money that cleared his most pressing debts. As he gave thanks and continued speaking his decree, another channel burst forth. An old business partner, silent for years, appeared with a proposal that required none of his money yet promised great returns. A proposal that prospered instantly and opened doors to further ventures. Within weeks, what had seemed impossible, the rebuilding of his fortune, the opening of opportunity, the restoration of his confidence, was accomplished with such ease that he himself admitted it felt miraculous. But there was no miracle of chance. It was spiritual law responding to spoken command. It was invisible supply rushing through channels that had always existed but had been dammed by fear until faith dissolved every barrier and opened the floodgates of wealth. This is what divine law does when you stop fighting it, when you stop trying to pry open doors with human force, when you stop begging heaven to give what is already yours, and instead you speak with the authority of spiritual dominion, declaring that every channel of your good is free, every path to your fortune is clear, Every stream of wealth is flowing now. There are no locked doors in divine mind, no blocked pathways in spirit, no withheld supply in the infinite storehouse of heaven. There are only illusions of limitation created by human disbelief, illusions that vanish the moment you shine upon them the light of spoken truth. The channels of your wealth have been prepared since the beginning, perfectly timed, perfectly ordered, perfectly aligned to deliver riches in ways beyond your imagining, and they do not need to be built or begged for. They need only to be recognized, acknowledged, and declared open by the voice of faith that knows its divine right to abundance. Therefore, take this decree into your mouth as a sword of light and speak it with all the power of your millionaire identity. Every channel of my supply is now open. Divine wealth flows to me without delay. The gates of abundance swing wide before me. My fortune rushes into visibility under grace and in perfect ways. No human force can close what heaven has opened. I am permanently connected to infinite riches, and my channels remain eternally free. Speak it until every fiber of your being knows it. Speak it until invisible walls crumble. Speak it until unseen rivers roar into your life with unstoppable flow. Speak it until you walk not as one hoping for wealth, but as one standing in the center of divine prosperity with channels so open, so vast, that riches cannot help but pour in from every direction. Let the world marvel at the suddenness of your fortune. Let them call it luck or miracle. But you will know that it is neither. It is law, and law always delivers to the soul that dares to speak its dominion and command its channels to open now. Dominion is not a mere concept of earthly power or human control. It is not the frail authority that men grant one another through titles, positions, or fleeting measures of success. True dominion is spiritual sovereignty, divine rulership bestowed upon every soul as its eternal birthright, the unshakable authority to command circumstances, to decree outcomes, to speak into the invisible substance of spirit and see it take form in perfect obedience. For as Scripture declares, "Thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee." And until you awaken to this law of spoken dominion, until you rise from the posture of pleading and step into the stance of decree, your words remain weak suggestions floating through the air, unable to move the mountains of limitation that stand between you and the fortune prepared for you since before the foundation of the world. Dominion is not won by toil or force or negotiation. It is claimed by recognition. It is activated by faith. It is demonstrated through the word spoken in alignment with divine law. And it is through this dominion that your millionaire destiny is not only secured, but visibly established. For wealth cannot resist the voice that speaks as heaven speaks. Fortune cannot deny the decree that carries the authority of spirit. Abundance cannot hesitate when commanded by one who knows their divine sovereignty. From the very beginning, mankind was given dominion over all created things, not dominion to abuse, not dominion to exploit, but dominion to govern life in harmony with divine order, to command supply with words of power, to rule circumstances instead of being ruled by them. Yet over time, fear silenced the voice of authority. Doubt stripped the scepter from human hands, and instead of decreeing riches, souls began to beg for survival. Instead of commanding provision, they pleaded with the universe to remember them. Instead of exercising divine rulership, they surrendered to the tyranny of appearances, believing that life was something that happened to them rather than something they were meant to speak into being. But divine law has never changed. Heaven has never revoked the gift of dominion. And in every moment, the power to decree and establish remains within you, like a sleeping giant waiting to awaken, like a king unaware of his own crown, like a master craftsman forgetting his tools while the world around him lies unshaped and unfinished. The awakening of dominion begins with the spoken word, for the tongue is the scepter of spiritual authority. The voice is the throne from which divine law is enforced. And when you speak not as a beggar hoping for scraps, but as a sovereign declaring truth, the universe rearranges itself to match your decree. I have witnessed souls shackled by poverty for decades rise to unimaginable wealth in a matter of weeks when they learned to speak with dominion, when they stopped saying, I need money, and began saying, my fortune is established now, when they ceased asking, will provision come, and began declaring, every channel of supply is open now, when they silenced every word of doubt and spoke only the language of divine command. I have dominion over wealth. I speak as one backed by infinite power. Money flows to me now, under grace, in perfect ways. My decree cannot be denied, for heaven itself has authorized it, and what I speak is established without delay. Understand that dominion does not fight appearances, it ignores them. Dominion does not reason with lack, it commands abundance. Dominion does not argue with impossibility, it decrees possibility into existence. To walk in dominion is to see through every visible wall of limitation into the invisible realm of divine supply, to stand unmoved by temporary setbacks because you know your word holds eternal authority, to look upon a desert of emptiness and say, rivers of wealth burst forth here now, to gaze at closed doors and say, these gates are lifted and I enter my fortune freely. The one who speaks with dominion does not wait for evidence to believe. They know their decree creates evidence. They know their word carves channels unseen by human eyes. They know their spoken command shakes invisible realms until circumstances yield in perfect obedience.